Thank you, Abby. Thank you also for spending time with our students at Drake. As a professor, I think it's super important that we get that opportunity, so thank you for spending time with them. As president, what specific strategies would you implement to promote diversity and inclusion in leadership roles within both public and private sectors? How do you plan to support the advancement of underrepresented groups, including women, in these areas?
So I'll be very honest with you. I'm going to share with you Thomas Sowell quote that stuck with me. If you care about somebody, you tell them the truth, or at least what you believe. If you care about yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. And I have a feeling I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear on this one. So I think the diversity, equity, inclusion agenda has been abused. In the name of diversity, we have, at many of our universities, totally sacrificed diversity of thought. In the name of equity, we've perpetuated a lot of inequity and inequality of opportunity through affirmative action and otherwise. In the name of inclusion, we've created a new culture of exclusion where certain points of view aren't welcome. So especially in a university setting, what do I care about? Diversity of viewpoint. This is important, actually. I think diversity of viewpoint is part of what this country was built on. Well, the best way to foster diversity of viewpoint is to screen candidates for the diversity of their views, actually. Look at the board members of many universities. You're going to go through their partisan affiliation. It's not 80-20. It's going to be like 90-10 in the other direction. That's completely at odds with the representation of this country. So do I value diversity of viewpoint? Absolutely. Do I think we're doing a good job of that? No, we're not. And it's not an accident. In the name of diversity, we've actually created a new culture of conformity. And so I think it's entirely possible to have a group of 10 people who look similar to one another, who have different views. I think it's entirely possible to have a group of 10 people who look different from one another, or who look the same as one another but have different views, or look different from one another and have the same views. And so I think the best way to screen candidates for the diversity of their experiences is to actually ask them about the diversity of their experiences. And I think the use of these racial and gender quota systems, I think have actually created a new form of racism in the United States that otherwise would not have existed. It's sad to me. I mean, I've hired, not because I was thinking about it consciously, plenty of black women in different positions of authority in this campaign or other companies or whatever. And I can tell you it saddens me when people look at somebody who I hired on the basis of merit and say that they only got that job because of their race or gender. That doesn't do anybody a favor. And so I think if we restore true meritocracy in this country and embrace true diversity of thought, chances are we're actually going to have a bunch of different shades of melanin and a range of genders in different positions. But let it be not the goal. Let it just be a byproduct of actually selecting for people who are the best person for the job, and especially in a university setting, diverse viewpoints as well. That's what I'll say.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today. You and I both grew up as kids of Indian immigrants who loved to debate, super confident, perhaps overconfident in our views. But here's the difference. I kind of know my limits. You, on the other hand, having never held or even run for any elected office before, be it Congress or even school board, having not voted in 3 presidential elections in a row, suddenly now want to be president, go straight for the top job on planet Earth. Your critics would say that's the epitome of tech bro arrogance. What is your response to them? I get that you're an outsider. Personally, I like outsiders. Yeah. But what have you done that even qualifies you to be president of the United States?
So look, Mehdi, I have been taking on bureaucracies my entire life. I took on the bureaucracy of big pharma starting in my late 20s, at a time when I think pharma was corrupt and going in a lot of directions that they shouldn't have been. I actually built a multi-billion-dollar business developing medicines that pharma had abandoned. I took on the ESG bureaucracy, competing with firms like BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard to build a successful firm called Strive. Yes, none of that is in government, but it is in the private sector. It involves taking on bureaucracies.
Okay.
And that exactly is my mission here, is taking on the biggest bureaucracy of all, that in the federal government in Washington, D.C. And the other thing I'll add to that, Mehdi, is it's not just the outsider pitch. I think we do need an outsider. I think it's good to have a business background. But I'm also an outsider who deeply understands the law and the Constitution in this country. And I think that's the unique combination that actually makes this my calling. And I hope that we're going to be successful in reviving this country.
So you talk about your business background. Let's talk about that. You made your name and made a lot of your early big money from pushing an Alzheimer's drug that had already failed 4 clinical trials when you bought it. You then talked it up on CNBC, in Forbes, on the cover. Your company's subsidiary shot up by billions in value when it went public in 2015. But then the drug failed its phase 3 trial on your watch. The company lost 75% of its value in a single day. Ordinary investors like the California State Teachers Pension Fund lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. But you cashed out beforehand via your parent company to the tune of, I believe, over $37 million. Your critics say it's a classic pump and dump scheme. What do you say to them?
Yeah, Mehdi, that's the standard opposition research during politics reading line. Anybody in the biotech industry knows this story very well. 99.7% of Alzheimer's drugs have failed. That's thousands of drugs. Mine was one of them. But the company I founded, Roivant, developed a range of medicines. And the way I made my money was not through the failure of that Alzheimer's drug. This is one of the pieces of misinformation from opposition research. I could have sold shares in that subsidiary Alzheimer's company, but didn't. So the person who was hurt by that was me.
Hold on.
But
you say this a lot, but you did sell shares in Roivant and you made $37 million.
And Mehdi,
$37 million.
Mehdi, I think you owe it to your audience. Mehdi, I think you owe it to your audience to be accurate. That is shares in a different company, not Axovant. And those shares that I sold are worth, and those shares are worth dramatically more today. So I would have made more money had I held on to those shares. So don't believe what the opposition research purveys through the media.
It's not opposition research. We looked at your tax returns, which you very kindly have released.
Yeah, exactly.
And you made
voluntarily released. Because I want to be transparent.
You made $300,000 in 2014 on capital gains. In 2015, after the IPO of this Axovant, you made $37 million in capital gains. Yet others didn't make that kind of money.
After Mehdi, give me a break. After Roivant, the multi-billion-dollar business that developed 40-plus medicines, yes, I sold shares in that. And that business, if I may actually allow you to know how I made my money, developed 5 FDA-approved therapies that are now FDA-approved today.
After you sold
one
the
of them is a life-saving therapy in kids.
When you were CEO,
Another one,
were
they were FDA. Actually, over the time that I developed them, we took them all the way through phase 3, and then we did a $3 billion deal that actually
they were approved a year and a half later after you sold the company.
Yes, so Mehdi, I'm not going to fault you for not knowing the first thing about biotech because that's not your job. But getting through phase 3 is the final stage of clinical testing before you hand in the application. Yes, my company did a $3 billion deal that actually did make money for those shareholders. And so, yes, I have built Roivant's a publicly traded company, nearly $10 billion public company today that I built as the sole founder from scratch as one of several companies that I've built. So, yes, I have a business record that I'm proud of and will equip me to lead this country.
You mentioned stage 3 trials. The Alzheimer's drug failed it after you did a lot of touting of it. You say 99.7% failed. You never said that at the time. Do you have any regrets about how you hyped that drug?
I did say that.
CEO of Roivant said this week that you hyped the drug. Do you regret hyping it?
We did not hype the drug. To the contrary, actually, one of the things that I found
this week.
Well, I can't speak for what is or is. I haven't read any article that you're quoting, so I don't exactly know what you're referring to. The fact of the matter is, though, I have been transparent at every step of the way. Everyone who is in the biotech industry knows that Alzheimer's disease is the graveyard for medicines. But I still think it's an important area of need. And I'll say this, Mehdi, is, you know what? If I serve for 2 terms, I'm still going to be in my 40s when I leave the White House. It is a personal passion of mine to come back and see if Alzheimer's disease hasn't been cured. I do want to play a role in still delivering treatments and cures for that disease. And people who don't take risks, don't achieve meaningful impact, the medicines that I did develop, I'm proud of. And you don't get there without having a number of medicines that you test along the way. And the other thing I will say is our success rate under my watch was higher than probably nearly 99.9% of biotech startups in the last decade. So, yeah, I stand by that record. I'm not afraid of taking risks. That's part of the American spirit.
Well, technically, the successes were a year and a half after you sold the company, but we'll get bogged down. Let's talk politics.
Mehdi, that's dead wrong. And I would sorry to say you're embarrassing yourself in front of anybody who knows anything about biotech for knowing that phase 3 trials are the final stage.
Okay.
The final stage, the FDA phase 3 studies succeeded. So you're barking up the wrong tree, but we can continue to move on.
Let's talk politics. We do. We want to talk lots of stuff.
Sure.
You're an advocate, your critics say, of fantasy politics, of magical thinking. They say you propose stuff that can't be done. For example, you said on Meet the Press the other week that if you had been in Mike Pence's place on January the 6th, you would have insisted on first passing a bill that night to bring in single-day voting on Election Day with paper ballots.
That's inaccurate.
Government issued ID.
I never said that night. I never said that night.
What you would have done on January the 6th, and you said I would have done this. And
I said what I would have done differently is that I was precise about the period between, and this is still ambitious, I will admit, but at least let's get my view correct. It is ambitious. Between November 4th.
Testimony that the border is secure.
The president have worked very hard to implement a strategy when it comes to the border that is humane, safe, and has orderly enforcement.
Things are going at the border, sir.
Much better.